Hey everyone, good evening. My name is Faizan. In today's video, I'm going to record a small 10-minute video on small businesses. Now, what is a small business? And just before I start, I'll give you a rough idea. I'm going to define and give you an idea about a small business. And mostly, I'm going to speak on a couple of ideas, which is on what is the small business based. So, like marketing, like operations, and so on. So, we'll get started. So, wonderful. So, what is small business? For me, small business, I think it is a wonderful alternative for all students and youngsters who are actually seeking some kind of employment, right? So, small business is also a wonderful way to get started and experiment with something of some idea that you have. Because any business that you want to do, which becomes bigger at a later stage, would have been small at a very shorter stage, at a very beginning part of the journey. And that is why small business is quite important, right? So one more thing that a small business means that anything that you're doing in a smaller scale. So, so for me, small business would be anything that you're doing on a small scale. So for example, say for example, if you're selling something locally, let's say you're selling some bakery products, or you're selling some health nutrition products, right? Anything that you're selling locally, it's a good or even something that you're teaching or doing something other thing, right? So if you're selling it to, let's say, 100 customers and you have fixed set of customers who repeat in a monthly basis, or you have a fixed percentage of repeating customers, so then that means that you do have a small business established. Now, what happens is that in any small business, even if you are doing it on a decent scale, let's say you are having some team members with you who are looking at some other functions of a business. So usually you will have to deal with one person who understands about goods and services. So for example, if you're doing something which is required to build in-house, like if you have a small setup where you actually manufacture goods and products, then you will need some person who understands that process of production, right? So that will be one separate function where the person who's involved in actually the manufacturing or the production process is responsible for the raw materials, is responsible for doing all the activities related to making a finished good. So that is one separate function. Or you may even be into trading, for example, you're not manufacturing something, but you're actually purchasing something from some other place and then having a small setup where you store your goods and probably sell it to customers. So that is another way, which is also something which is requires lesser capital, and I would recommend you to do that as well. If of course you're able to see which thing interests you, which kind of goods or something else that interests you, because you can't do anything. I mean, so it's better to choose something that is of interest to you. For example, in my case, mostly my interest areas are in education. So that is what I try to experiment with, and I found a good set of customers in my education offering. So it's a good way at least to have some kind of side income, or even some it's a good way to get started, because the moment you understand the basics of it, and you're able to have a decent functioning small business, let's say 100 customers or 200 customers, it makes a way for you to be able to replicate the same idea into a larger number. And then as you replicate the same idea into larger number, more things, more processes, more structures will come into play. But that itself would be at a much later stage. For now, I will stick to a small, someone who's trying to be self-employed, someone who's trying to do a freelancing business, or someone who's trying to do something on the side of a small business opportunity. All right, let's talk about two more functions. So the other two functions that I see is one is marketing and the other is operations. So what would be marketing? So some people have misconception that marketing is like speaking to people, prospects we call them, and convincing or persuading or telling them that this is a goods or service that you have, and see if you are able to purchase it. But that's fine. That is actually sales. Marketing would actually be how do you reach to people who are relevant to your goods and services, who basically have a need, or who basically want that particular good or service that you have will be able to satisfy that want or need in exchange of money, of course, in exchange of money. So that is marketing. You want to reach more people, and you want to reach the relevant people because even reaching has a cost to it. So in today's world, sometimes if you're doing something locally, then marketing would be easier because you can just speak to people, you can put a board, or you can just through word of mouth itself, things get spread. That okay, at least the awareness part and the reach part gets spread quite, I would say, little easily, of course, without spending. But otherwise, you can also spend some money and ensure that the idea about awareness part at least reaches more and more people, so that from among those set of people, people who are actually interested in buying your product or service in would become your prospects, who will then come to you and probably engage with you, where you can present the offerings, the how you can actually benefit their need or want. And then if it closes, then then you have a particular set of customer. That is the usual process that is defined in what I call as marketing. So it's a process that has to be done not one time, but it's a continuous process, because you want to ensure that the awareness is something that keeps on happening on a weekly basis, at least if not on a daily basis. Because if you have that awareness keeping on happening, then that would mean that you have something called a pipeline of people who are probably your prospects. We call them, there's a term to it as well, but this is a pipeline of people who can actually meet, and then you probably convert into customer. So that is the function, and you can have someone who can actually look into that function as well. All right, the last part is what I call as operations. Now, what is operations? I would say for me, this is the part which is not that hard for someone who's just starting off, because the hard part is how do you reach and how do you ensure that you reach the right set of people, and then have that process of converting. That is the difficult part, in fact, according to me. But again, some people might find it easy, some that if you're flair for it. So it also depends on the nature of the person and the strengths of the entrepreneur. But otherwise, usually what happens is that we want to ensure that we have a good or service that is actually satisfying a customer's need or want at a market price or an affordable price, at least to start off. You're free to sell it at a higher price if you get a customer, but in the beginning, especially, you should probably not be risk free, because to ensure that if you have an affordable set of product and good service, which is something that satisfies the want of a customer, then that is perhaps more attractive, and you can easily attract more people. So that is these two things, which is understanding the particular good manufacturing, or and then the second function, which is marketing, are actually not easy in the beginning. But once you have a set of customers, let's say 100 customers, then the operations part is nothing but ensuring the fulfillment of the demand. That's what operations is. How do you fulfill the demand, and how do you fulfill the demand at the right time with the right quality? I think these two metrics, quality and time fulfillment, I think there's this, I learned this in urban company fulfillment, right? For them, it's a big, it's a big problem, because fulfillment for them is a very different thing. But if we are not a urban company, if you are a small business owner, fulfillment for you would just be that you transfer the good and service at the predetermined price, and at a time which is, let's say, even shorter, and ensure that the quality is met according to the predetermined conversation that you have had. So time and quality, and this two would be good enough to start off. There are more things, of course, but for now, operations would only mean that you have to transfer what was agreed upon and what was paid for in a reasonable with reasonable quality, which was just thought of, and in a time frame which is delightful for customer. If not, if you should aim for delightful, but even if you do it in a shorter time frame, that is also good. That is the lesson that I wanted to share on a small business. It's three functions. One is goods and service, then is marketing, and then the easier part, at least for most people, because you have had a paying customer, and getting a paying customer is a major win. So, and then the last part is operations. So you have a set of customers. Now you can kind of retain them. You can maintain a set of customers, and you have a cash flow that flows in. So that's the ideal that we hope for. Thank you for listening.